Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I was prompted to tell you about my experiences as an infant within the music education system of Finland. But of course, my generation came a little before we could actually enjoy the full product of the Finnish education system. When I was studying, the whole thing was still being developed and so on and so forth. And when I was at the Sibelius Academy, it was still it wasn't a state university as it is now. It was a foundation, i.e., essentially a private school, which meant that maybe its status within the Finnish cultural hierarchy or the sort of scholarly hierarchy was slightly lower than what it is now, but also it meant that it was a flexible kind of operation because it didn't have the same rules as the universities did. However, the way I got started was, I guess, very typical of a middle-class child of Helsinki, born in the late 50s, early 60s. When I was 4 years old, my mother suggested I play the piano because she had an illusion of me being musical, and I refused point blank because it was very clear to me that girls play piano, boys play the soccer. I have since revised my attitudes. I think girls can play the soccer as well. So she was wise enough not to do anything about this. And then what happened, I'm not quite sure what it was, but I believe I heard Beethoven 9 on the radio, something like that. And I got interested. So I joined the recorder class in my school. I went to a very good school called Suomalainen Yhteiskoulu. Was a very good school. Not a music school, but a school with a lot of emphasis on the arts. And despite the fact that I joined the recorder class, I actually developed a lasting love of music. You know how it sounds. You have 35 kids blowing into these plastic things, and it makes a hell of a noise and really very unpleasant. But that's the real test early on in life, that if you survive that, then you can survive almost anything. And then my school provided instrumental teachers, and there were 2 fine orchestras in the school and so on and so forth. So I wanted to play in an orchestra, so I started playing the trumpet, and soon after that I met a guy who now is a very successful banker in Finland, but he was then a horn player, French horn player. He said that I should change for the French horn because it's a noble instrument, and Schumann said that it's the soul of the orchestra, and besides that, it's easier to get into an orchestra as a French horn player, and if you get into the orchestra in the school, then you can skip lots of other lessons like PE and stuff. So I was very tempted, and I changed. And at that point, my life changed too, because my teacher then became Holger Fransman, who was the grand old man of all Finnish brass musicians, and he himself was being engaged by Robert Kajanus in 1931 to be the first horn of the Helsinki Philharmonic Orchestra and so on and so forth. So all of a sudden I was studying with this great man, and it really did change my life. And at this point, as this room is full of teachers, I have to say that there's nothing as wonderful as being a teacher. I think this is the greatest profession, and I think that the best teachers are as immortal as the greatest composers or writers or painters or whatever, because the tradition never dies, and it goes on generation after generation, and we remember our great teachers, and we love them as long as we live. I mean, this is one great profession. Congratulations. Then, when I was, I think, 14 or 15, my horn teacher suggested I go to the Sibelius Academy to study on the youth department. The nice thing about the Sibelius Academy then, and I suppose even now, is that there's a special department for youngsters who are serious about their musical studies, but still want to finish their ordinary school as well. So you can do these two things parallel. So I joined, and the great thing then, I don't know whether this is still possible, but even within the youth program, you can choose any subjects. So I started doing counterpoint, advanced counterpoint, and advanced harmony then already, and then I started studying composition when I was, I think, 16. With the professor Enuani Rautavaara then, and also we started a group of young composers called Ears Open, Korvat Auki. That was in the mid-70s, and the idea was to open the doors in Finland for Central European modernist principles that somehow hadn't made their way in. We felt that the musical life and the musical values in Finland in the mid-70s were very sort of stagnated and stuffy. Every generation feels this, of course, no matter what. And I think it's the right thing to do. You should always murder your fathers. That's the thing to do. That was one. Now when I think back, I feel that I've been incredibly lucky in many ways. I always had the best teachers, and also I had friends and colleagues who were a source of tremendous inspiration and healthy competition, I would say, but more affection and inspiration. And we, in the Ears Open Society, we were sort of like-minded young people, and we wanted to change things. And the people like Kaija Saaria or Magnus Lindberg, these are the most familiar names abroad, but lots of other talented people as well. And I think more than from anybody else, I learned from my peers, and that's one of the secrets of the Finnish success in music education, which is actually not by design. It is the fact that the society is small enough that it creates a sort of a density. All talent concentrates in one place, more or less. It's one bar in central Helsinki, and it sort of becomes very easy to look over the pigeonholes and the categories. Composers hang out with conductors, and conductors hang out with musicians, and musicians hang out with singers, and so on and so forth. And the kind of thing that, for me, quite often seems like a problem in this country is that conducting department of a university is there, the northwestern side of the campus, and then the composers are somewhere totally different, and there's never ever a sort of an organic feeling of belonging together, and also the campus life is very far removed from the sort of real musical life, if you wish, the stuff that the orchestras are doing in town and so on and so forth. But of course, in a place like Helsinki, everybody was, as I said, in the same room, more or less. And so, it is very difficult to become pompous in a society like that, because you grow up together with a lot of other people, and you realize that whether you conduct or compose or play or sing or whatever, it's just a different aspect of the same thing. And to be a conductor is not any fancier than being something else, because it's just normal. Some people conduct, and most Finns do all kinds of things. Because it's a small country, so people have to do several things at the same time. You have to be your own plumber in a way. Then I took my diploma in home playing while I was still studying in the honorary school as well, and then I continued. Composition was my main subject, and conducting came as an afterthought because my peers, my pals, thought that somebody has to conduct this stuff, and no real conductor was interested in our music. So we had to develop one, and that was me, because I had a lot of practical experience from playing, and I was subbing in orchestras in Helsinki and earning a bit of pocket money by playing the horn in the Finnish National Opera Orchestra and the radio sometimes, and so on and so forth. And so I had no great designs of becoming a conductor. In fact, I thought conductors are disgusting. I very much dislike this image of a conductor, Herbert von Karajan, riding a Harley Davidson on a sort of LP cover, conducting Ein Heldenleben. And I thought that was real crap. I still do, actually. And I thought that conductors get so much attention for almost no reason. And the really important guy, i.e. the composer, is the worst paid one, and the guy who always stays in the worst hotel and is being kicked on the head by everybody else. So I thought this was wrong. I still do, actually. I had a very interesting experience some maybe 12 years ago in Paris. The French radio organized a festival where they played music by exotic composers from exotic countries like Finland and Norway and Cambodia and so on and so forth. This is the Paris perspective. You go north of Lille and then you are, you could be just as well in Antarctic. All right. But anyway, so I was invited to Paris as a composer. And all composers were staying in a rather modest hotel close to the radio building, and we walk in with my wife, and I start swearing. Look at this dump! It's just unbelievable. How can they put people into this kind of a dump? I guess this was a normally fine, a perfectly adequate little hotel. And she looked at me and said, "Well, you are here as a composer. Now think, you're not here as a conductor. You're the same guy, but you're here as a composer. So your hotel is crap, in your opinion." So I did learn a lesson. Something is wrong with this system. Okay, that's just a paragraph that doesn't belong to today's text, but that's what it is. So I finished my studies in the Sibelius Academy around 1980. I have to be honest about it. I never finished anything. In fact, I didn't do a few theoretical things. So I have no diploma. I have no papers. I'm an outlaw. And when they made me an honorary doctor a few years ago, they actually suggested I finish my studies before that. just to be a good example to the youngsters, but I didn't buy it, I think. Anyway, and then still within the Finnish music education system, I got a scholarship to continue my studies abroad. So I went to Milan, Italy, and studied with Castiglioni for half a year, and then I came back to Finland and started my professional life. One thing I also have to say, apart from the actual education, which I think was first rate, and I feel very lucky for that. But there's another aspect that was also great in terms of being a young conductor, which is that the Finnish professional musical institutions actually have seen the necessity of investing in young talent, even if you might not get 100% result the first time or the second time or the third time. But they have understood that if you want to keep a continuity and tradition going in a small country like Finland, you have to invest and you have to take the risk. So I was given all kinds of big jobs in Finland, which some I suppose I did okay, some I certainly didn't. But they said, well, we believe in you. Carry on. And that's also something one does not forget later in life. And I think that's also the one of the secrets, if you wish, that the professional, established musical life has got the guts to invest in young people with the risks that it entails. And one more thing, which is that also in terms of conducting, older Finnish conductors have always felt the responsibility to take care of the younger generation. And of course, as we now, my generation, the middle-aged types, as we were helped and supported like this 25 years ago, now we feel the same responsibility, that we are very interested in the new talent, and we are trying our best to nurture it and make sure that it gets the opportunities with it. And that's also a key in this, because conducting is a hopeless profession in this way, because it's a vicious circle in the beginning. You get no gigs because you have no experience. Okay? How do you get experience? By doing gigs. So it's a vicious circle that has to be broken somehow. And the only way to break it is to have help from somebody, an older colleague, mostly. Because you can't practice at home like a pianist can. And a very esteemed colleague of mine said that for a conductor, the first 20 years are like practicing in public. And then comes the 21st year, and nothing changes. But that is basically the story. At this point, if you want to ask some simple, benign questions, I'm happy to answer. The difficult questions should be addressed to the management of the Sibelius Academy and the New York Philharmonic.
Any questions for Mr. Salonen?
Not quite a question. I just want to say
Microphone's coming.
I had the pleasure of seeing you conduct in Los Angeles last summer, and I just want to say you were great. We all enjoyed it, and thank you.
Thank you. That's a good question. I like that.
Questions, comments? Yes, sir, over here.
So who are some young Finnish musicians we should be on the lookout for to nurture?
Oh, I don't want to make a list here now, but there's certainly a very powerful young generation coming up, and while I don't know the under 20 people so well at the moment, but in the field of conducting, there's a tremendous new crop coming. They're actually a little too talented for comfort. But as we can't stop them, we have to help them. So there are 4 or 5 people who are really very amazing, composing same thing. And I have to say that, of course, I've been working with Finnish instrumentalists now for over 25 years, and the way the system is producing really fabulous players at the moment is very impressive. And what also is very inspiring is that as I said, Finns, as it's a small nation, you do a bit of this and that. It's in Finland, it's rather easy not to be completely pigeonholed. And there's a sort of a spirit that, you can play Baroque violin, and you can play Xenakis, and you can play jazz, and you can play bluegrass without compromising. You're not a less serious artist if you have more eclectic tastes. And of course, this is something that in many other cultures is incredibly suspect. Even if one person is trying to do 2 things, that's already kind of iffy, because that is a sign of not being serious. And I think what it says is that our age is hopelessly specialized. The era is just becoming more and more fragmented, and the idea of seeing larger units is increasingly rare. Like when my roof started leaking in LA, as it rained a lot, which wasn't in my contract, but nevertheless. And I called a roofer, and he comes and looks at the roof and says, no, it's not the roof, it's the deck. So call the deck man. So I called the deck man, who's also called Vasily, for some odd reason.